Well, hello everyone. You are tuning in to episode 4 of Feldenkrais, Moving into the Unknown, with Dale Dickens, Heidi Carroll and Libby Murray. So we are Feldenkrais students completing our second year of training in Melbourne, Australia, and we are really curious about how Feldenkrais is evolving today. So as our conversation is deepening now, we're building a community of Feldenkrais practitioners, students, and people interested in movement education listening in to unravel some of the current questions surrounding our learning, our practice and our sharing of this learning method. So moving, I guess, a little further outwards in the sphere of how we bring Feldenkrais into the world. As embodied scientists, we would like to welcome Cynthia Allen today, who has a wealth of experience in building, maintaining and managing an online Feldenkrais presence. So it's something really topical, if not essential these days. Cynthia is an experienced Feldenkrais practitioner, movement educator, senior trainer in Ruth Yalom's movement intelligence, co-creator of integral human gait theory, and runs a private practice in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's right, in the US. Cynthia runs a very successful business called Future Life Now, offering Feldenkrais to a larger audience via an online platform called Your Learning Body. So welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate being here. It's exciting.
And thank you. We are pleased to have you and very keen to hear some of your motivations and strategies for building Feldenkrais community and creating and developing the hugely successful Feldenkrais Awareness Summit, which I think is in its third year and had a great success in raising the profile of Feldenkrais worldwide. And I think the reach exceeded that of last year, I believe, in listening in quite considerably.
Yeah. Last year, COVID helped. This past year, so in 2020, COVID definitely, COVID plus being a third year definitely kicked it up a big notch.
Yeah, it's and I think it's often seen as a little bit of a dirty topic, marketing in marketing the Feldenkrais in the Feldenkrais world. But, we're interested in how we can raise the profile and market ourselves effectively whilst remaining true to Moshe Feldenkrais philosophy. So I think your business acumen and business success, I sense a deep commitment to the method and what it can bring in the world of human potential. So maybe we can begin there. And can we talk a little bit about bringing digital connectivity into the world of Feldenkrais and how this process began for you?
Yeah. So I think, first, this relationship we have with the word marketing is important, and it's taken me a long time to maybe come to some level of comfort with it. And finally this year I realized as people were writing in and asking things like, how I hate marketing, but I need to be online. What should I do? That I realized, okay, one of the first things we need to quit telling ourselves is that we hate marketing. It needs to go. That kind of languaging needs to go. And partly it needs to go because the truth is that we are all doing marketing, whether we realize it or not. I mean, we sell things to our kids to try to get them to participate. We sell things to our spouses, our friends, to try to get them to be interested. I mean, whether it's like supper, what you're serving for supper, you really want them to eat what you're serving for supper. I mean, this is marketing, and we do a lot of it. We decide what we're going to look like. And even if we take like no care in our appearance, we are actively marketing ourselves. We are still actively marketing ourselves. We're giving ourselves a look and we're saying, this is who I am in the world. This is how I want you to relate to me. and it either works or doesn't work for you. So we're all doing it. We're all doing it all the time. And it's just a matter of realizing that if we're intentional about it, we're more likely to get the results that we want. Well, does this sound like something that we know out of the Feldenkrais work, right? If you know what you're doing, you can get what you want, kind of language that comes from Moshe. So I think those are the first sort of setups that we perhaps need. Now, I think there's also like a lot of fear that if the work is popular, it will become diluted. And there may be some value to that. I mean, I'm actually not going to be one to, I think, argue that one way or the other. I think that it is true that once a work really gets out the barn door, so to speak, you no longer have as much control over it. And so for me, the question becomes more about what kind of impact do I want to have in the world? Do I think that I want to be able to reach as many people as possible for their own health, for their own benefit, and effectively, effectively. And I think those are the things I want to try to balance within myself is, do I want to reach people effectively, and do I want to reach more of them effectively? Okay, so, and really this is a same issue I had when I was trying to build my private practice. So building my private practice and sitting there at years 2, 3, 4, 5 going, oh, okay, this is a little rough to try to make a living off of here. And then at year 10 for me really going, okay, now I don't think I'm going to have to worry about if I can eat or not anymore, but that was a long haul. So I would not say that I did that the easy marketing way. I had a strategy in my mind that I wanted to use, and there were things I didn't want to do, and I probably could have done it a lot faster if I would have been willing to get more outside my comfort zone. So for me, the online piece, which I started to fool with a little over 5 years ago now, was really because I thought that we might want to move back to where we lived. I was raised and where my husband's children are. So my stepchildren, my grandchildren, they're there. I thought we might want to move back to Missouri. And I already knew that the amount of work in building a private practice into a really small community was not something I was going to want to undertake again at this stage of my life. But I also knew I wanted to continue to teach. Both financially, I need to, and also because I love it. So then I thought, maybe there's something that I can learn to do in online. Maybe there's something there that I can learn to do in online. So that's really how it started for me, with a lot of quotes failures, huge amounts of failures, really major ones for failures to begin with. But of course, this is what it turns out to be, right? You get on the horse, you fall off, and if you want to learn to ride, you'll have to get back on it eventually, and hopefully each successive approximation becomes a little bit easier. And so that's what's happened for me, is that it's over the last 5-ish years, each one has gotten a little bit easier. Each approximation got a little bit easier. I have to say the first 2 years, though, were pretty rough. It was like, oh, I don't really know. I mean, it looks like this is possible, but boy, I'm not pulling it off. And even after the first 2 summits, even with the summit success, I did not know how to convert that into something that could help me make a living, really. So that only really happened for me this last year, that I finally hit some kind of level of expertise or something. I don't even really I can only kind of guess, I guess. I think I have a really educated guess about the pieces that came together. But I don't know for sure, because I only have me, just like all of Feldenkrais. I only have me, and I'm a case study of one. So we have to be careful what we make out of that.
Yes.
I'm really interested in those failures. I know that part of Feldenkrais is really being comfortable in the uncomfortable. So I'm really interested in I guess, things that you specifically did, but any stories that you've got about what you tried and how that came, what happened in the
Yeah.
end.
Well, I think that there is interesting things in those failures for people to learn from. And in fact, they're failures that now that I have taken a lot of online courses, and that's really what changed for me as I started educating myself in a major way. So I started to be willing to learn from people who actually knew what they were doing. I think there's a lot to learn from those failures. So one of the large ones I did was that I built my Better Back program. I saw that I wanted to have a signature program. I was going to build this signature program. I was going to put it out there. I thought, my gosh, there's millions of people with back pain. Surely somebody will, surely people will be interested in that. I gave it a really low, inexpensive price. For the first time out, I hired someone to help me with it. We spent money on Facebook advertising, and I got one person to sign up for this extensive program. And I was like, okay, I need to serve this person for 14 weeks with just her and me, or I have to cancel it, or what am I going to do? And luckily that program at that time was a lot of pre-recorded material. So I had done all this pre-recording and editing, and really I put a lot into it. And I was like, and now I've got bills and to pay on this. And I sold this one thing. I had a webinar that went okay, but I didn't really understand what the conversion rate on webinars or live events was going to be. Hadn't really researched that enough. So I thought that I had a really hot audience with what I had. And, I mean, they were interactive, and I think I did a good job on the webinar. But, it didn't go so well. I also started an online membership, and that was probably, right from the beginning, I felt like that had just enough juice in it, just enough success to keep me going. Like, it wasn't enough to do anything with financially, but it was enough for me to go, oh, there's some potential here. There's some potential here. If I can keep working with this online membership where people can tune in to Feldenkrais lessons, and my idea then was only pre-recorded lessons, so I wasn't putting very much work into it. Now, it's a lot of work to form a membership, especially if you try to do it in a custom way, which is what I initially did, and then went to a pre-purchase service and then came back to building my own custom site again. So it's a lot of work, and it is money, but I could see that there could be some potential in that one. So that one has continued, and it's actually in its 5th year now. And as of this year, I'm like, okay, there is enough juice in this now at year 5 for me to really enjoy it, for my members to really enjoy it. Like, the interaction between them is going strong. I've had to change the format considerably in my understanding of what is going to allow people to stay engaged. I've had to be willing to raise the price point way above what I ever thought I would charge for it. I always saw it as something that should be at a really low fee rate, but now I understand that people actually do better when they financially commit. I'll just say that again.
Yeah.
It's very important. Very important. People actually do better when they financially commit.
Yeah.
Now, I saw this in myself because I have signed up for many free things, and I have gotten a lot out of some of those free things, but a lot of them I never attend. Then I have bought many programs that I would say were in the $500 or less range that I never did a single lesson out of over the last few years. But then I started signing up for courses that were much higher than anything I've charged so far, in the $2,000 range. And by golly, I tuned in. I was like, I paid $2,000. I'm going to at least get half of this done, right? I'm not going to just let this sit for 2 years before I touch it. So there is one of the teachers I study with says that the and it sounds like such a horrible marketing cliche, but I've come to think it's true, that the transformation is in the transaction.
Wow.
Yes, absolutely, Cynthia. That is the contract, if you like. There's a verbal agreement. There's a listing for this person is on page with me, or you can hear when they're not. So then you can shape the contract into, or it's negotiation, which is really, really missing in the world. And I find what you're saying fascinating in that functional integration is a negotiation. If you've got somebody on the table working with their body, skeletal system to skeletal system, it's a constant negotiation of the person, of the practitioner and the client, building and connecting relationship such that the movement can occur together. You know, there are, of course, failures along the way as the exploration begins into how can we connect. So I find it fascinating that in the Feldenkrais body, if you like, the global body, that there's a hesitancy to integrate into the online world. And there's a caution, you mentioned it before, letting the horse out of the barn. So are we then going to be able to negotiate this? I hear it as negotiate this in the real world. Will we lose ourselves? Which I'm sure, so we haven't yet done the functional integration section, but I'm sure that occurs as a practitioner. It's like, am I going to lose this connection? How do I maintain it? So I find...
Yeah, and it is different. I mean, it is different online. I mean, I have to say that now this year has given me the opportunity to teach several hundred people online for the first time, you know, over the course of weeks. So I've had, since this last summit, I've had 4 or 5 fairly decent sized online programs going. And I am surprised at how well I'm getting to know people, especially the people that are willing to keep their cameras on, to ask questions. So I'm talking about groups of 50 or 60 people at a time, or in my currently right now in your learning body, there's a couple of hundred that show up for each of the sessions. And I feel like at the end of 9 weeks, for those people who have been tuning in, showing their faces, showing their names, writing in the comments, asking questions, I will feel like I will know a fair amount of them. And is it the same as being in an in-person classroom with 20 people? It's not. Of course it's not. I mean, and I'm not saying that it is, that I would still very much want to teach in person if I can. I love in-person teaching. I really love it. And I'm learning to love online teaching. But I won't confuse them as being the same thing. And certainly the difference between working with someone one-to-one on Zoom and having the ability to meet them on your table is, you know, it's just different. I mean, and I do think that both can be lovely, but they're not the same thing. I think that's still true. I want to ask you that though, Dale. So I'm surprised at now that COVID has hit, that there are still people who are hesitant, because I just don't see, I don't see how evolutionarily we can continue to deny the importance. I mean, I just think we go extinct.
So one thing I want to point out is I've been doing Feldenkrais for over 20 years. I have never, not once, had a call from a practitioner after my session to see how I'm fitting this work into the world. I have never had a pre-call to prepare me for what I'm entering into. So there's something really missing from the body, the presence of which would make a profound difference. And it, you know, and ironically, it is the connectivity. That, you know, if this work were brought into the world as a human body, connection it's so critical. It's like once we're on the table, that's when the work's done. It's really not. It's in the connectivity, in getting to know. Moshe did it himself. In one of our sessions, I learned that he contacted over 200 people before they arrived in the room to get some background into what he was going to bring into the foreground. Yet that is not it's not transferred into now with the internet. I always wonder, what would Moshe have done with the internet? He used a recording device in a way that no other person had, by constantly copying over his work. How would he have used the internet? He would have been in heaven here.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to know, right? So maybe. Yeah, I sure hope that would be true. But yeah, those are interesting points. And I would say, Dale, one of the reasons that that hasn't happened is we haven't been willing to charge the money for a session that justifies all that. So if you're going to have that kind of level of high touch pre and post session, you're talking about a much different fee structure. You know, and that's true in online programming as well. On online programming, when I'm looking at, okay, what am I going to charge now? I'm looking at, okay, if I've got this number of people, what's the level of high touch that I could do, or what's the level of touch that I could reasonably do with that number of people? And then if I really want to have what I would call a high touch program, then I have to be willing to actually price it according to what allows me to do that. And that doesn't mean just me. It means the staff that supports it behind the scenes as well. So we had to hire 2 people in the last few months. Actually, we just hired 2 people in the last 2 months. And I'm pretty sure we're going to need a 3rd one in January, but I got to wait and see how these folks actually settle in and what they their skill sets end up being before I decide what that would even be or look like. But then it becomes not only about you, but also what your support system and structure looks like as well.
It's the value. It's like the work is not valued comparatively to what it provides for the world.
Yeah, yeah.
I
think the work is valued. I think it might be something different than that. I think it might be that people value the work. We value the work, but I think maybe we don't have a way of thinking about ourselves in relationship to the work in the world that is valued. So I think the work is valued.
I really liked how you mentioned it's almost that commitment from the person that is doing the Feldenkrais, that, that our clients, we really need that commitment from them, that it's not that just complete osmosis process, that if I'm expert enough, it will just transfer to them. And you're saying that we need that commitment money-wise, which I'm doing yoga teaching at the moment as well, and it's similar in the yoga world. Everyone wants to work on a spiritual level and not charge much, but it's not. Yeah, we need to be able to be functional in our world and not take on that whole onus of someone else's progress, that they have to have that level of commitment as well.
Yeah, I think one of the worst things in the world that Feldenkrais teachers can do is model their system of charging after what the yoga world has done. I mean, that's a sure way of everybody going broke. And I don't think it helps the people in the end. We can always find ways to offer scholarships or specialized programs for people who have needs. It doesn't have to be something that we do for every single person. Yeah.
So I guess we talked about your failures. What now, and you've talked about obviously the successes you've got to. What do you feel, was there anything particular that got you to being able to employ 2 new people, or, get the turnover and really be able to, because we're in this position, we want this to be our life. We want this to be our income, as well as being able to spread it through the world. So what, have you got some advice really?
Yeah, I do. I do. So one of the things that is very clear in the marketing world is to be willing to niche down. And so I have not been very good at that yet, but I will say that if you really want to have the fastest success, that is what you will do. And we're kind of allergic to that in the Feldenkrais world. We like being generalists. We like serving as many different people as possible. And we also like making really clear that we're serving all these emotional needs in addition to the physical needs, right? And that's okay. One of the interesting things is that I sign up for these marketing programs, and then at least 50% of the programs are actually about emotions, at least 50%. These teachers are just diving into all the emotional, psychological aspects in a huge way. And then it's almost like the marketing tips are on the side in a little side dish. And they make clear, look, you have to be willing to meet people where they are. They want the marketing stuff. They're going to get the marketing stuff. But the truth of the matter is they first have to have the transformation that will allow them to use that marketing stuff effectively. So when I look at that from a Feldenkrais perspective, and I hear this, niche down, they say niche down until it hurts. So for example, that would be like somebody deciding that they were going to build their online business around pelvic floor health. Now you could even get more specific, pelvic floor health for women right after having a baby. You could get into pelvic floor health for women over 55. You could get into pelvic floor health for men at different stages. And so you can see now I went from pelvic floor health, which some of us would go, ooh, I don't want that to be my identity, only that. I want to teach this, and I want to teach that, and I want to teach this. And I got all these ideas, right? Because I'm like an idea person, and I can come up with more ideas by noon than a person can institute in a lifetime. So I have to be willing to keep drawing myself back in and going, hey, Cynthia, where do you want to be successful? How do you want to be successful right now? What's reasonable right now? So what I've seen over and over in being a member of these groups is these people who are able to niche down and then do a little bit of testing of their niche. They sort of, put some feelers out and go, hey, anybody really going to be interested in this? And then they do what the marketers tell them, which is they go join different kinds of groups or discussion forums, and they listen to the language that's spoken. This is huge. They listen to the language of what do the people with pelvic floor health say? What are they actually saying? What's the words that they use to discuss, to talk about what their struggle in their life is? So this means we have to let go of using our Feldenkrais language, because that doesn't relate to them as being heard around their problem and their desires. So the Feldenkrais language, the Feldenkrais word about me, any of that, all comes way down the line. First, there's this basic building of rapport around, hey, I speak the same language as you speak around this issue of the pelvic floor and what you want in your life. I get you. I understand your pain points, is what they call them. So you've identified your group. You've done a little kind of testing the waters a bit to go, there's people out there who are being successful serving this, or that looks like that I could be a success in it. The numbers appear to be there. Then you're refining your language, and then you refine what's called your avatar, which is you want to know, are you serving women? Are you serving men? Are you serving people who go by it or they? Are you serving a certain age range? How do these people spend their time? What do they like to do? And you build out a sketch of who you're going to be serving, because that's also going to impact your colors, your language as well.
Yeah, Cynthia, it's like it's really just applying a really, really good, strong business model to what you're bringing forward. I'm hearing just a really solid business model, but with referencing Feldenkrais, just as we don't want to see it as a product, but if we are creating a business, then that is, and we need to make it relatable, and we need to be connecting with the people and maintaining that connection. And I'm interested in how you do that, how you strike the balance in building a business and hopefully bringing that to more people and maintaining a personal balance with what you do, because it's very difficult starting a business, maintaining it, running it, and I'm seeing there's a lot of energy taken up in that. And I've heard that you are outsourcing and using people, but how does that affect you personally? How do you balance that?
Very poorly. I mean, that's my current thing that I'm paying coaching for, is how to learn how to do better at harnessing my creative energy. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I don't. I mean, these businesses are work, so I don't think I want to say that they're not. You do need, in my perception of how I understand the world to work today, you do need to be willing to put in some time and some effort. And that has never been my problem, right? So that my problem has never been that I wouldn't put in time and effort. I'm somebody who will work ridiculously hard to make something happen when it probably has almost no chance of success whatsoever. So that's not my issue. But my issue is that, again, I have an excessive amount of creative ideas. And so, I can think of constantly new directions to go. So that's kind of a basic problem for most entrepreneurs, is they have difficulty ratcheting down. So I don't know if I'm a good example for what most people who are Feldenkrais practitioners are in that way. I don't know if my situation is a good example for that. What I'm currently trying to learn how to do is to be more along the lines of what I was like when although I still worked very hard even in the corporate environment, but more along the lines of understanding how important a team was, and really honing that team, helping them learn their role, helping them define their role, and letting them go with what they do best within the team, so that I would not need to work as hard doing things that really make no sense for me to be doing. Mm-hmm. But when you're first starting out, you really don't have a lot of choices about most of that, unless you have some kind of unlimited funds situation. And even then, there is a certain element, as far as I can tell, that you need to learn from the ground up, or you'll just get taken advantage of in a really big way. So like, I look at some of the early things I did in hiring people for Facebook advertising and stuff, and it was just, I mean, I don't even think they ever thought that had a chance of being successful. I think they were just making money off of people who didn't know better about how those things actually work.
So is that judicious use of external expertise? And
it's not. It's actually not. You have to be pretty far down the line in your process, pretty clarified in your process, before use of money in Facebook advertising is going to be of value to you. This last year, for the third summit, was the first time that we did Facebook advertising, and we spent a considerable amount of money on it, and it did break even, but it was a squeaker. It was like, even the guy who said, "Hey, I pride myself on breaking even," and I was really thinking we weren't going to break even on this. It was like right down to the wire. We just barely made it through with the last couple of people that made it pay for itself. Now, if the people that they brought in are really a match for my avatar, our avatar, and then somewhere down the line, those people become rabid fans, rabid participants of what we do, then of course it did more than pay for itself. But that part is, to some degree unknown at that point. And I actually don't know how to track that yet. So it's still kind of unknown for me, but yeah.
Yes.
And I think we think that the solution is going to be in advertising. I did. And what it really is again, it's back to niche down till it hurts, get the language of your avatar, start building an audience. Actually, the recommendations from most everybody now is pre-sell something before you've even developed it, so that you can see that there's going to be an audience for it. You have it in your head, you kind of know what you're going to do with it, but you pre-sell it and you go, "Hey, I was able to get 20 people for that at a somewhat okay rate for something that I'm just getting ready to start out. I'm going to go ahead and develop it and deliver it. And then I'm going to get some good feedback from them, hopefully some good testimonials. Then I'll see what I can do with it next. So most of us our go-to is to develop the program first, because that's what we know how to do. Like, I know how to put together a class. I can do that in my sleep, right? So why wouldn't I want to do that? Oh, I got 6 more ideas for a new class series. I want to do that. I'll get those all laid out. I'll go film the videos. I'll get everything done. And then I go to sell it. Nobody wants it.
Yeah, it's marketing
So
the audience, really finding out. So, you know, who needs Feldenkrais these days? I think it's really, really beneficial for just about everyone. And I'm not sure how to really, you know, what is your audience really? I was interested in is it a wide audience, or tell us about your target audience?
yeah, I mean, my audience appears to be over 55, maybe even over 65 from what we've seen. Certainly on YouTube, it's over 65. And it is predominantly female. Do I get outliers? Yeah, probably 1 in every 7 to 10 men, depending on the program. One out of one. I say that differently. So somewhere around 7 to 10% is male, but the rest are female. It seems like there's a little bit higher rate of men, like in my Your Better Back program, than perhaps in some of my programs. But it's a little bit harder to tell, like in the membership in your learning body. I've noticed that men hide there a little bit more than in the larger numbers. They kind of sort of disappear a little bit more into the background. So I don't have as good a feel about that. About their presence there. But I do certainly get still, you know, people here and there in their 20s or their 30s or their 40s, or I get athletes, or I get a mix. I do get a mix. But what you're asked, and that's most everybody does that when they define their program. It turns out that, you know, you'll get like maybe, you know, 50, 60, 70% of them will be all in your avatar. And then these other people will be sort of the outliers. And they're certainly welcome to come, and they get all kinds of benefit from the program. But you keep your eyes still focused on your main avatar, and so that your languaging is not confusing to people. They're like, oh, even if you never say the words, I never say to people, hey, I'm serving people over 55. But when I did the languaging for the summit last year, I said in my head, I'm serving women over 55. That's what I said in my head. I'm serving women over 55. I'm serving women over 55. I'm serving women over 55. How do the women over 55 talk about themselves? Let me start looking through all these emails we've been getting over the last few years, try to understand what people are asking us for. Let me look at their language in other groups, try to understand what they're asking us for, what they're struggling with, and then use that language.
So can you share a little bit about your vision for, say, Future Life Now, and how you see that fitting in, you know, in 10 years' time from here? Or are you constantly refining? Just a little bit about your vision and what you see moving forwards with Feldenkrais in an online sense.
I'm not looking that far ahead, to be honest. I'm 61, so 71. Do I want to be working at this level? I probably don't. But I am, at the same time that I say that, I mean, I find it difficult to pull myself back from all the potential things that could happen that seem really positive to me. But my plans right now, for the most part, are to do what my mentors are telling me, which is not to develop any new programs, that I should stick with the programs I have. And so I'm planning to continue to do one large summit a year in May and one smaller summit in the fall that would be more of a specialty summit. This year will be the summit that will be for parents with children that have disabilities or special needs. And continue to work with my Your Learning Body program. Continue to work with the Your Better Back program. So under and then also, I'm hoping I'll get to continue to train Bones for Life teachers. That is also present and under the Future Life Now auspices. Now, under the nonprofit that I run, Integrative Learning Center with Carol Montgomery, we're working on the integral human gait theory, and we're working on raising funds for the next research project and looking at a book, our first book, but that's sort of like a side adventure that I'm not supposed to talk about because I shouldn't be doing it. So I never bring it up in my mentoring groups at all because they're already like, Cynthia, you have to cut something back. You have to be willing to let go of something. I'm like, I don't want to let go of anything. I don't want to let go of anything. So what I've done is committed so far to not starting anything additional. However, that I have a lot of additional ideas in my head. So.
What I'm hearing also is the connection with other people, and some being Feldenkrais practitioners. And I know on your website, you've got other people that you work with in your actual business. So can you talk about how you've connected with other people and how that's helped you move in different directions and help to process?
Yeah. Yes. So about 15 years ago, two colleagues and I formed the Integrative Learning Center, and that has been hugely impactful for me. So Phyllis Evely and Carol Montgomery. Phyllis died about 6 years ago now. Carol and I are still working together. And then also Denise Dyke worked with us for quite a while. And for me, there was something that was able to happen in the quality of my teaching that would never have come without that collaboration. And I wouldn't call that collaboration easy. I mean, I would say that we get along extremely well and we have a lot of caring for each other. So that's like the baseline of it. That's been extremely, extremely valuable. And we're interested in each other's growth, and we're interested in working through issues and problems together in a way that feels good for all of us. And because of that, I think we've all grown tremendously. It's interesting because I am not one that I would see as a collaborator. I mean, I've always been extremely independent, and I don't know, I wouldn't say like a know-it-all, but it's sort of like I got my thing and you all just stay out of my thing. I'm going to keep my thing. I'm territorial. And so to learn to be a collaborator has been just a really huge shift for me. And at the same time, I would have to say that it is very difficult to get things done in groups of people. So groups of people hardly ever accomplish all that much, to be honest, except just to ruminate and throw things around with each other. And so I do think that, things get done usually mostly because of one incredibly visionary, persistent person. And even if it's a PTA committee, which are super important, you still find out is there's usually one person on that committee that's actually really doing the work, and everybody else sort of tags along and goes to the meetings.
Cynthia, just to clarify that your integrative learning, is that, so Carol, she's another Feldenkrais practitioner. So we're talking with other Feldenkrais practitioners or other learning methods as well.
In the private practice, there have been other learning methods until recently, but those collaborations, I don't think I personally grew that much from those particular collaborations. We had practices within the group. We were good friends, but I don't think that actually spurred my growth as a practitioner or as an entrepreneur.
What about as far as your clientele base and having the different options for them to come to you, you know, whether they're doing Feldenkrais or NLP or acupuncture? Was there sort of a cross pollination, I guess? Does that happen?
Very little.
Very little.
Very little. And I think it depends. If you had a practice where everybody was at the same level of success, fairly successful, I think there would be. But what we had is a practice where there was mostly me and some of my husband, and then everybody else was trying to get things started. So I fed into their practices for quite a long time, but they were not able to really do that back. It really takes a different kind of personality for building private practices. So I've learned a lot about group practice, and I don't see that our setting up a group practice is one of my successes, actually. I don't. I see it as one of my things like, okay, I probably wouldn't have been happy if I hadn't have done it, but that did not work out the way I planned. And it was a lot of work for 6 years that I'm not really sure where it went. So it's not actually something I would put on anybody's list to do. Now, maybe somebody else could be really super successful with it, but I would say I was not.
So Cynthia, I find it really interesting as you speak to hear the paradox. So on one hand, you're really struggling with, and we say niche, you call it niche. Mm-hmm. So just for translation for our Australian audience, we call it a niche.
Niche.
So to have, on the one hand, you have issues, or your struggle is with defining a niche in generating all of your ideas. Yet on the other hand, you prefer to be an individual than working with a group. You're finding it difficult. Can you get that paradox? So on the one hand, you're saying you really struggle to get a niche, but then when you want to work, you work individually rather than in a group. So spreading the ideas that way is more of a struggle for you.
No,
so
I'm not following it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I just find it really interesting the talk about working with a group. That could be like a whole load of ideas that are spread out, and you as an individual find that challenging. So that's all I can hear. It may land differently when you hear back.
Well, what I found difficult, so let's clarify that. What I found difficult about it is that holistic practitioners they pretty much all want to practice in their own little silo. And they want their practice to go the way they want it to go. And also they don't want to do marketing. So there's a whole bunch of things going on there in a group practice. So I had in my mind that I would be able to build practices for other people, and I couldn't do that. So if I couldn't do that, there really wasn't much left to be successful with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So I mean, what I really failed at was that part of it. Is I had a vision in my mind that we would have just an incredibly, because I came from a group practice background. So I did program development. I'm used to working with helping people practice, worked with the setup of hundreds of physicians' practices over the years, group practices. I mean, that's already sort of like the groundedness from which I came into the Feldenkrais work, right? So each of us are coming into the Feldenkrais work with another background, usually, because there's not that many people in their 20s that I know of that are entering the Feldenkrais work. So a lot of us have another career. And so we come in with a skill set. And so my skill set was always this managing group practices, growing group practices from the ground up, that kind of thing. So I thought that I would be able to do that. And I was not successful at doing that. By contrast, if you look at a summit, there is an element of which I'm doing it alone, but it's a major collaboration. it's a huge collaboration, really. I mean, there's nothing in a summit without the other speakers. Nobody's going to show up and listen to me speak for 20 hours. So it's the volume of all these different teachers, right, that are willing to collaborate with us that makes that successful. And even beyond that, it's not just that they collaborate and come in and put themselves out there, but that at least a fairly large number of them are willing to cross-pollinate with each other. So they share the summit. And so we're all cross-pollinating with each other. And that in and of itself creates a collaboration and a success. So that's a model that does work.
There has to be agreement and contract to begin with. So I've also done a lot of work with groups, and one of the models that I have experience with is in changing accountability. So the team would be set up each quarter. There would be somebody that would be accountable for organizing the conference, for example, and then other people would agree to be a second tier, marketing, contacting people, whatever needs to be done. And then at the end of the quarter, there would be a meeting to see what it was like to work on that particular team. Then the next quarter, somebody else would stand up and be accountable for the coordination of the event. And then other people, so everybody would continually change roles over the course of 12 months. And the game was to experience each other as a leader or to be led by. So then the conversation would stir at the end of that quarter to just share what worked and what didn't. And of course, along the way, there would be the collaborative process would be in transferring the information through to the following quarter.
And you were doing that in a volunteer environment, or you were doing that within a corporate environment, or?
Volunteer.
Volunteer
That was a
environment.
volunteer environment, yeah.
Yeah.
And it absolutely changes it up when it is volunteer or corporate. When you get money involved, and it's completely different.
Right. I was going to say, how is it funded? And is anybody's livelihood dependent on it? Those are all the kinds of questions that are interesting to
But it is the foundation of it is agreement and structure. So there has to be an agreement as to how the hierarchy, if you like, is created from the beginning.
Yes.
So something collaborative to work. Absolutely. I totally agree with everything you've been saying. It's a very interesting process.
And I guess what I'm hearing here too is that where we began, Cynthia, is that ownership from the clientele first, like, putting up money up front. You need them to own and take responsibility. And if you're working with other peers and trying to working as a team and, cross-pollinate, there has to be that same level of responsibility on each person's part and ownership, so that whether you're working clientele or you're working with other people, it really needs to be clear who's doing what, and everyone taking some sense of ownership. That's what you're talking about, Dale, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think also, so I'm going to take credit for my perception that I could do something for people that really only they can do for themselves. I mean, it maybe if you had a really ginormous funnel, you would be able to do that. But I've watched some pretty large holistic practices in Cincinnati fail that did have a pretty ginormous funnel. And I think it's a very similar reasons, which is in the end, this relationship between a practitioner or a therapist and the client is extraordinarily personal. And unless you have a corner on the market somehow because of what it is you do that nobody else does, and everybody is clamoring for you, they don't even care what your name is, then you need to be willing to put yourself out there continually to create the reputation, create your own personal reputation. So by the time my practice was successful, I said, it's not really successful so much because I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner. It's successful because people are referring people to me because of the results that I help people get. And the fact that I'm Feldenkrais is sort of tangential. I mean, people don't even know how to pronounce the word when they show up. They're coming to see me. And if somebody had said she does something else, I don't know that it would have mattered that much. What matters is that the quality of the referral that was built off of, hopefully, the quality of the results that I've been producing.
And the relationship that you've built with
That's right.
those people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Relationships matter a huge amount. Yeah.
So I guess that we started with the online question is how do you really create that relationship, not just with the client while you're doing the particular course or whatever, how do you create that really positive relationship between, like you've got Facebook and all different things, and how do you keep that relationship really positive and renewed in between?
Or intimate. It's because there is also a level of intimacy. How do you maintain the intimacy online without seeing people face to face? This is a flat medium.
Yeah.
How do you bring the Feldenkrais dimension to it, or the Cynthia dimension?
Yeah, I think it's more the Cynthia dimension or the Dale dimension or the Heidi dimension or the Libby dimension that you want to identify the group of people that are going to identify with your style and your vibration or whatever you want to call it. And I don't know. My style is a kind of personal, a fairly personal way of talking to people, and it's a fairly sharing, kind of a sharing of both combinations of professional and personal thoughts. And we try in all of our emails, I try, which we get a lot of emails now. And when we did this last summit and we didn't know it was going to be that successful, and we asked the question, people registered, and then 4 hours later, they got an email asking them, what is it you really want to get from the summit? And if you answer it, we'll take the time to read it and we will respond. And because it was so, the way that I write is so personal, it did say that the team will respond, but people wrote back, and of course they wrote to me, and they wrote really, some people wrote very short things, but a lot of people wrote really long, heartfelt experiences of things that were going on in their lives, really depth. And some people in a paragraph or a few sentences would write that depth, and some people it would take quite a long time to get it out. And so we started going, okay, this is a lot of emails, right? And so we get our team lined up, and people said, I'm not comfortable. This just doesn't feel right for me to be the one responding. And I said, well, there's no way I can respond to all of them. It's not physically possible. So here's the guidelines. If something seems incredibly personal, or it seems like they need advice related to health or health issues, emotional issues, then you're going to put those over to me, and then you're going to respond to the rest of them. And you're going to respond by you reading it. You're going to see what words they used in the email. You're going to reflect back some of their words. You're going to see if you have a recommendation that you can make about the summit based on some of what they said. And then you're going to sign it, your name, on behalf of Cynthia and the Move Better, Feel Better team. And so every time that any one of us read one of those emails, I believe we all had a moment of going, okay, here's another email. Oh, that person's really reaching out to us. And I know I smile when I'm writing my responses, or I feel touched in my heart when I'm writing the responses. Now, it's true, after I hit the button, I look up and go, oh my God, there's hundreds more to go. And then I go to the next one and I read it and I go, and so it's a discipline, but it's also a real desire to be present, right? To be present and to be open, and I don't think everybody will do it that way. And I don't think everybody has to do it that way. That's what I've seen, is that some people develop their audiences based on keeping some kind of almost level of impersonalness there, and that their audience really likes that. So it doesn't have to be that way. And we know that for the summit coming up that we can't ask that question, because we would not probably be able to staff for it at all. So we're trying to figure out, you know, can we have how can we have that personal connection in a different way? Because I don't think I can hire enough people to do that.
I'll volunteer. I would volunteer. So I see this as a way to train myself up.
Yeah, it is, but it's complicated. I mean, I appreciate that, but you have to learn like 5 different pieces of software just to answer these emails. So you
don't know who I am, Cynthia.
It's a big deal. And I also think that I think the audience needs to be almost entirely made up of people answering. If we ask that question, I think we have to have practitioners who work with children on board to answer the questions. And I don't have enough people in that range to do that.
So that comes back to niche. So, and Cynthia, also, I just have to say thank you very much for bringing that to the introduction of this conversation. You rounded us up like sheep with our questions from all over the place. Bring it into a niche. I can really hear the background coming to the foreground there. So that was really
and that's an example of me not willing to settle on a niche, right there. That is not my niche. I do see some children, but I've never made it my major thing. I don't consider that to be my specialty at all. But I felt the need, I heard the need in the emails that had been coming in. And I think it's a huge need in any year, but I think it's an even bigger need in the year of COVID.
Yes.
So it's not like the best marketing choice for me, right? Because it's not going to be my niche, but it feels satisfying.
I hear you as somebody also that can really guide and coach future, not only Feldenkrais practitioners, but future alternative.
I'm just having trouble hearing you for some reason out of nowhere. I'm sorry. I'm just not getting hardly anything from your sound. Let me see if I can do anything to change that. Don't understand.
Try again, Dale.
So, Cynthia, all I said was I can hear you as a real wealth of experience in what you bring to this conversation, and somebody as a guide and a coach. So it could be that you do provide coaching for new practitioners, for example, to assist us and guide us in this really important aspect, which is not touched on in our training.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, it is, but not to this degree. So and also there's a lot about planning for how we're going to grow, and then there's also just getting like a natural extension that just grows from what we're passionate about. And I can really, really hear you being passionate to share this information forward.
I am passionate to share the information, but I don't have any desire to develop this as a line of my business. So I'm passionate about coming online here and there for an interview like this. But there are teachers out there that are making this their mission, and they know this stuff way better than I do. That's why I've been studying with them. So I really think people can do well by finding someone to study with that. I mean, they're serving every kind of practice under the sun, and they know what they're doing. You know, one of the turning points for me was in my willingness to follow marketing advice was a year ago in the fall when I was doing what was probably my fourth or fifth launch of Your Learning Body, my online membership. And one of the things that I had resisted up to then was the classic marketing sequence. I had resisted that in emails, and I didn't want to put out that many emails. I thought it was obnoxious, blah, 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 blah. I just didn't, it doesn't work. I would just go on and on and on about it in my head. And then I heard this teacher saying, look, you can do whatever you've been doing. And if you're happy with your results, go for it. If you haven't been happy with your results, then follow my sequence. Exactly the way I tell you, follow it. Do it exactly the way I tell you and see what happens. So I wouldn't say I did it exactly, but I did it close to exactly. And the one email that I really said to myself, I'm not going to send it out. I just can't stand it. It just makes me feel, ugh, I don't want to do it, was the one that said, you only have 3 hours left to sign up. It closes at midnight. You only have 3 hours left to sign up. I made myself send it, and 40% of the people signed up in those last 3 hours. Now, you can say, oh, they just were pressured into something they didn't want, but that is not the case. Some people really need a deadline. Some people need to know, this is it. This is the moment. This is your time. And that's what drives them to make that final decision. And if you don't do it, they just wait till the next year, and then they'll piddle around watching it through the next year too. While in the background, they're thinking, I want to do that. I want to do that. I really want to do that. But that to them is not enough of a container. It's not enough of a constraint to take action. So that's why I'm saying, there's just better teachers on this kind of stuff. I am passionate about this getting out there, because I have to tell you, the absolute opportunities to reach people with this work now is massive. If you're willing to take a niche and go for it, and you do some of these things I talked about, you're willing to start taking all the free programs you can, and then you start piling up a little bit of the cheaper programs, and then you get into some of the more better ones, you can be very successful if you're willing to follow them. The question is whether you're willing to follow them and, be ready to put in at least 2 or 3 years, I would say. But I think in 2 or 3 years, if you really follow them, as opposed to taking my approach, which was more meandering, I think you can do it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Also planning for the maintenance. There's one thing in delivering, but it's the maintenance, which oftentimes is forgotten. So
I've just lost you entirely. I'm sorry. Something about maintenance, but I'm just not getting your sound for some reason. I don't know why.
Okay.
I think Dale's speaking about, Cynthia, once you've created something. So I'm hearing that your advice to us as start-out practitioners would be to think about the niche and think about a business model, think about our target audience and the language that we're using to communicate with them, and design something that's going to work in terms of the communication whilst delivering a program, and just having some structure about it and some finite timelines. And so I think Dale was about to ask then, to consider, or whether you also have to consider the maintenance of then what you've created.
Oh yeah, you definitely don't just get to deliver something and then go off on an island. You do have to consider the maintenance for sure. It's a business, it's a business, and it's not only a business, but it's a series of relationships that you need to nurture in good faith. So it's for sure. Sure, for sure. So it's not like a one-hit wonder. I don't know. Maybe somebody could do that, but I don't hear that from people in these markets. And I have to tell you, some of these that you would think. At first I thought all the people that were making money in online programming were people teaching people how to make money. I was like, oh, well, it's just like a big pyramid scheme, and everybody's just teaching everybody else how to make money, and who doesn't want to sign up for a program like that? And then I started listening within my groups, because when you get into these higher level programs, you get to know the other businesses, the other entrepreneurs. And I started realizing there were people in, OT, PT, painting, guitar, with extremely, it's like hard to imagine the level of success they attain within a couple of years. And so I'm just going to say this is so shocking, but there are people within 2 and 3 years hitting 7 figures in these internet systems. It's like, what? That does not even make any sense. I thought it was just the people who are teaching people how to make money that were doing that. Now, I'm not saying that that's our goal. But I am trying to paint a little bit of a picture for people that we have been limiting ourselves way too much in what the potential reach of the internet is. And somebody is going to connect with these people in their lives. Why shouldn't it be us with the Feldenkrais work? Why shouldn't it be us with the somatic work? You know, why should it be that some of these sleazier things are the ones that are going wild, right?
So this brings me to the app question.
The ask question?
The app.
The app question, yes. Okay, so I'm not a good person to ask about apps, to be honest, because I'm just like, I have never been interested in them. And I could probably try to be interested in them. I thought about them a little bit off and on. I did a little bit of checking. I probably will turn Your Learning Body into some kind of app for its members in the next year, but I don't even know what that means. I'm just going to find someone else to do that. I think, though, based on the little bit of research I did, that apps are the same issue as online programs, which is be sure you clarify your niche, be sure you do some market testing to see if people want it. A lot of people develop apps. I mean, the vast majority of apps never go anywhere. So there's a huge amount of apps that never see the light of day or never serve more than 5 people. So I would just be a little cautious about how much you put into it. I would probably do something, Dale, like what they teach in one of my the programs on memberships, which is called a founder's launch. I would probably do something like a founder's launch in which you would ask people to sign up for the beta version, which you would develop after you got a core group of people to pay for it. Basically, they're going to help pay for the development of it. And then they'll come in at a very low rate. So let's say you manage to get 50 people at a really low rate on that app, and they would own access and rights to it, and they would give you feedback. I would probably go somewhere along those lines, just so you didn't accidentally put too much work into it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. This has been a really great process for me personally. It's sort of taken that fear out of where do I go to now? And what I have heard is I need to be me. I need to put myself out there, but do it in a way where I'm personable, I'm myself, and I'm really interested now in going and doing the work to just see what it got. And as you said, Feldenkrais is such a beautiful thing that we should be sharing with the world, and we shouldn't limit our own self. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Yes.
You're welcome. And you know, that's that old cliche, it's the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, is always true, right? So, and the first time you do something like a Facebook Live, or you decide to try to do an online event or webinar, it's totally normal to be nauseated, sweating, and run to the bathroom with diarrhea for the first few weeks. So those are all just normal. And and you'll get past it, and you'll get better every single time, and then you'll do it.
So this is for us, it's about moving into that unknown and getting uncomfortable, you know, being uncomfortable in there, but just keep moving forward. So you've really helped me personally with that process, and hopefully lots of other people. So thank you so much.
I'm glad.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Okay.